This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
Dub them ease.
And we are back for another edition of the Onside Kick here on Most Valuable Podcast. If you're coming back in, welcome back. If you're new, first time, long time, no matter what you are, welcome into the show where we talk about the best football news. But recently, Mark, we've been kind of going through divisions, previewing teams, and we're finally here. This is the last one.
Yeah.
The last one that we have, and like you said before we recorded, we didn't mean to do this, but who are we going to end with? Who's the last preview we're going to have?
The Atlanta Falcons.
The Atlanta Falcons, which are the Super Bowl runners-up. So we're kind of, you didn't win the Super Bowl, but at least you get to be
We'll talk about
the
you
last
last.
one.
Yep,
You'll be the very last
We
one
liked you guys.
that we talk about. But if you're new, how we do it, we start from the bottom. We'll start with the Carolina Panthers. We'll go all the way to the tippy top and end with the Atlanta Falcons leaving the Saints and the Bucs somewhere in between. They're somewhere in there. But coming into this one, we'll start right away with the Carolina Panthers. And they're a team where you have said in past podcasts, in your Bears prediction video that went up the day as we're recording this, that the defense for the Panthers is the big question mark for you. They're the big one. The offense should be fine, but the defense should be a question mark. They lose Josh Norman 2 years ago, but now they're losing guys like Charles Johnson, and they're only bringing in, they bring in Julius Peppers. They go ahead and they bring in Captain Munnerlyn, one from your former team in the Bears, one from my team in the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, if you're referring to Julius Peppers in his Bears days,
I said
it's nothing to be excited about.
And that's why I said former, because I know he went to the Green Bay Packers, and that's where he was as of late. But this team loses quite a bit. They bring in a little bit, though, where they do bring in Charles Johnson, the wide receiver. They actually bring in a trio from my Minnesota Vikings. Charles Johnson, Matt Khalil, and Captain Munnerlyn all coming to town, and they also bring in, like I mentioned, Julius Peppers from the Green Bay Packers. But I don't want to start with the defense. I want to start with a rookie that was kind of surprisingly picked by this Panthers team so high, because on draft day when we heard the inklings of, hey, you know what? If you're there, we're going to take you, and that was Christian McCaffrey. I want to ask you this, Mark. With the defensive issues off to the side, can Christian McCaffrey kind of carry the load for this Carolina Panther team? And I know before Panther fans get all their panties in a jumble, I know you have Jonathan Stewart, but can Christian McCaffrey be the guy who's as explosive to help out Cam Newton in this offense?
Well, I think he certainly can be such a benefit to Cam Newton, both in the passing game a bit, because he does, he is a good pass catcher. He's got good hands there. And also out of the back for being a running back. So he can do a little bit of both, and Cam Newton needs that. Some of the issues still are going to rely on that offensive line needs to be better. The problem that I have, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the draft pick in the first round for them, but I look at it and I say, okay, but the running game wasn't your issue last year. You had one of the better running games in the NFL. Now, I get it. Jonathan Stewart's getting older. You can't count on him forever. But it's not like he was the workhorse doing it all on his own either. So Christian McCaffrey does come in and does make the offensive, or the run game, I should say, better. But it was the strong point of this offense anyways. It's always been the strong point of this offense. So I don't think you really put yourself that much further ahead with it. But you certainly are improving. That's why you look at, the second round getting Curtis Samuel as well as a receiver, which really is kind of more of where the issue was. And I get that part of that's due to injury. But I just kind of think that it's a good pick to get McCaffrey. Yes, he's going to be very beneficial. And yes, Cam Newton's going to know how to take advantage of this. But it's not a huge move. It's something that we're excited about, we're going to enjoy, but we're not going crazy over it.
I am on the other side. I am very excited for seeing Christian McCaffrey in a Panthers uniform, and mainly because I can't wait to see what he can bring to the run game, to the pass catch game out of the backfield. I know,
which will be good, yeah.
While you were talking, you said, oh, well, you know what? This was one of the units that was the strongest for this team last year.
It was their strongest, yeah.
I just think back to how strong is the word that I'm going to use, but there's probably a different word I want to use, where how good their run game was when they had Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams. Kind of that thunder and lightning, per se, in the backfield. The power back, the speed back.
But they had a better... Now, I know we're not talking about the defense right now, but they had a better defense that complemented that then, too.
Well, and I think this is going to get them back to it. And Jonathan Stewart has already said, and I quote, he being Christian McCaffrey, he's pretty unstoppable as far as coming out of the backfield running routes. I can tell you now, they're not going to be anybody in the league that can cover him one-on-one, end quote. And that is what I think he can bring to this offense, because Cam Newton is a guy that this entire team, the big storyline for this team is, can you bounce back? They had the Super Bowl appearance. They had the fall after the Super Bowl, like right after the Super Bowl, the whole Cam Newton towel of the head, Cam Newton not wanting to answer questions. The big storyline we were talking about is Cam Newton, the baby. Then last year happens, you start 1-5, you finish with a 6-10 record, and it was a dismal season for Carolina Panther fans. This is the year where if you're a Panther fan, you want to get back up into that team where it's like, hey, you know what? We're not just a playoff team. We are going to challenge for the division. We're going to challenge to be back on that Super Bowl stage. This is where it starts. Getting a guy like Christian McCaffrey who can go ahead and be a jumpstart for you on offense.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that he's not. I'm just saying that the problem that the Panthers have had in recent years is that the passing game isn't complementing the running game. And that was an okay issue to have when you had the best defense in the league, or at least the second best for Broncos fans that want to get mad at me. When you had the best defense in the league just a couple of years ago, it doesn't matter that the passing game's not that good. Not bad, but it's nothing special. So when that's continuing to be a problem this year and the defense isn't as good as it was before, this was a below-average defense last year. Not terrible, but it's below average.
Yeah.
That's where those kind of holes get in there. And I'm not saying that they should have for sure drafted a wide receiver in the first round, because they got a good wide receiver in the second round.
Or even like a defensive player.
Yeah, I'm not saying they needed to do either one of those, because Christian McCaffrey is a great pick, and a great pick for the future as well, if he's going to be everything that we all are kind of unanimously agreeing that he should be. It's just not the kind of thing that I think people are viewing Christian McCaffrey and going, boom, they're going right back. They are right now a double-digit win team for sure, and that's not the case.
The thing that I think that might flip this year with the Panthers, not because of just Christian McCaffrey, but just because of adding new weapons, because they also added Curtis Samuel, who's wide receiver out of Ohio State.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting him to be, boom, he's the number one
but he's
now
a good
wide
addition.
receiver. But yeah, he's a good speedster on this team. I expect this to be, Calvin Benjamin and Funchess up front, and then Samuel being that slot guy for the Panthers. And I look at their schedule last year, and you look at games like at Denver, 1-point loss. You look at Tampa Bay at home on Monday night, a 3-point loss. The Saints on the road, another 3-point loss. You look at Kansas City at home, another 3-point loss. You look at the Raiders at Oakland, a 3-point loss. You look at Tampa Bay to end the season, a 1-point loss. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games alone that came down to one field goal. One field goal, and even the Denver game was less than a field goal. They would have won that game if Gano didn't miss the field goal, I want to say really late in that game as time expired. And if you flip those, this is a winning team.
Well,
This is a team that is now a winning season, might even be a playoff team.
But I would argue that the running game isn't the thing that flips those type of games.
And that's why I didn't want to insinuate that that's what I was trying to say. But I do think that Christian McCaffrey can help to bring it to where, okay, those
you
games
can start
might
to flip
be,
some of them.
not all of them, but some of them.
Yeah, and I do think he's a great piece. I mean, he's one of the most exciting parts to this offense. I mean, you're never going to necessarily be more excited than Cam Newton because of the way he can single-handedly turn around a game.
He got 2 shiny new toys, one in the backfield and one out on the outside.
And he's still got my favorite, Greg Olsen.
Yeah, plus he kind of got an addition and subtraction because I don't care if there's Panther fans that like Ted Ginn Jr., he was a drop machine.
Oh, yeah.
And you are better off with him not on your team. I will always have a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a soft spot, but kind of a rough spot in my heart for Ted Ginn because of fantasy football. Would have won the game. All he had to do was catch that pass against the Colts. Wide open, right in the breadbasket, and he drops it. Right through his hands. Couldn't catch it. Would have been an easy touchdown. You're better without him. You're better with Curtis Samuel. But is the defense going to be the weakest part of this team?
And you look at some of the additions, you mentioned Charles Johnson, Julius Peppers, and
Julius Jardinere Peppers.
Of course.
Let's put some respect on that name.
I think that Julius Peppers is the interesting one because he was very, very successful in Green Bay when he was more of a linebacker. When he was in Chicago as a defensive end, couldn't do anything. But, of course, when he was a defensive end in Carolina, completely different story. He was great. So I sit there and I wonder, it's like, okay, you were successful in a particular kind of defense in Green Bay. And then you go back to a similar defense to what you couldn't really be successful in Chicago. Is it purely that Chicago had a shitty defense? And they did. A really shitty one. Franchise worst defense. Is it purely that was the problem and that Julius Peppers is going to bounce back as soon as he gets back to a much better defense than what Chicago was able to field a few years ago?
I wonder if it's just Chicago in general. That's
just when people go to Chicago, it falls apart.
I mean, kind of. Like, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, look at even, I mean, off the top of your head, can you think of great free agents or great players that have been traded to Chicago and once they've been there, they've fallen off and it's like, wow, this isn't what we expected them to be.
That's kind of the Chicago way.
Jay Cutler.
Jay Cutler's a little bit different than Julius Peppers.
Yeah, but that was the one that comes into my mind of how excited Bears fans were, and then it was like at the end how.
But he only really had that one. He had that one good year that really got people excited. Where Julius Peppers had a career.
And the thing that I'm looking at right now is the thing that is the most interesting is part of me was like, oh, Chicago Bears. If him and Ron Rivera were in Chicago at the same time, and they weren't. Ron Rivera was in Chicago in the 04 to 06,
a while ago.
Whereas Peppers was there 2010 to 2013. So it's not even a necessarily I'm coming back to be with the defensive coordinator
just his
that
team.
I had.
His old team.
His old team. Also, I mean, Captain Munnerlyn as well. He's coming back to the Panthers after his 3-year stint with my Minnesota Vikings. And to me, that's the bigger addition to me for this defense is you go ahead and you lose Josh Norman. And
don't try and compare Captain Munnerlyn to Josh Norman.
I'm not saying they are exactly the same, but there was a hole. There was a hole that was blatantly obvious in that cornerback spot.
Yeah.
You lost Josh Norman, and the way you lost him, where he had the tender, he was on the team, and then all of a sudden, nope, not signing the tender, ripping it up, and I'm going somewhere else. And that's how he ended up with the Redskins.
Well, I believe it was more of the owners ripping it up.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Captain Munnerlyn is an exact carbon copy to Josh Norman, but from what I've seen in Minnesota the last couple of years with Captain Munnerlyn, Munnerlyn is a guy that you can put in that cornerback slot. Put him right side, left side, let him go up against top receivers, and he can be a guy that you can say, okay, our cornerbacks are fine. We got Captain Munnerlyn out there kind of leading the unit out there.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just a Munnerlyn hater here, but I don't think it's that great of an upgrade. I don't know. Maybe
it's not an upgrade from Josh Norman. It's an upgrade from not having Josh Norman.
I mean, having nothing there, yeah, but I don't think that it's
an
that
upgrade
great
from last season.
It's not that big of an upgrade.
I think it is. I look at the cornerbacks and any of the other cornerbacks. If Captain Munnerlyn was not on this team, I would be saying cornerbacks is a huge issue for this team. they're going to get roasted through the air. I think that Captain Munnerlyn gives them a little stability where it's like, okay, at least we know that we can put him on the top receiver, and it's not like we have a kind of weak link going up against that top receiver.
I don't completely agree. I don't think he's that great. I don't think he's that good. I think that a true number one receiver will have his number. Now, when you were back in the days playing the Bears, sure, Cam Meredith might not have been able to do much against Captain Munnerlyn, but you put Jordy Nelson against him.
I don't know. Jordy Nelson was injured one year.
Yeah, right.
He was injured one year.
And I think Captain Munnerlyn might have been responsible for it. You put him against somebody who's got some good actual number one wide receiver talent, and I think he doesn't look as good. Now, that does get you some success against average teams who don't have a number one kind of guy. But when you're going to play Julio, and you're going to play Mevins, and you're going to play, what's New
Mike
Orleans'
Thomas.
new weapon? You're going to have these valuable true number one wide receivers that are going to go against you and are going to actually make a difference. So I don't know. We'll see. And I'm ready to be proven wrong about Captain Munnerlyn if he goes out there and he does a good job and adequately performs like a Josh Norman.
Well, and I'm looking at the schedule right now of just number one wide receivers that they'll have to play, just based on the number one wide receiver to Captain Munnerlyn. The 49ers, I'm not afraid of.
They don't have much, yeah.
The Buffalo Bills, it's like, is Sammy Watkins going to be healthy? And is and is he going to be the true number one that they asked for? And plus Zay Jones, if Zay Jones has to be the number one, I'm not scared there. New Orleans in Michael Thomas, that's kind of one where it's like, okay, maybe the New England has a plethora. They've got
this is where it starts to get scary.
They've got Brandon Cooks. They've got Julian Edelman out there. The Lions. I mean, Golden Tate. I think all the NFC North teams, I'll be fine with Munnerlyn out there only because he knows them. It's kind of a familiarity thing where I've seen. These teams,
there is a benefit to that.
I've seen these teams twice a year for the past 3 years, but like the Eagles are going to be tougher this year because they've got Alshon. All the division games, like you said, but like Miami, I'm not super scared of. The Jets, I'm not super scared of. And like the Niners and Bills, I'm not super scared of. So
I mean, I would put Jordy Nelson into something to be scared of.
I'm not saying Captain Munnerlyn's going to be that lockdown corner for him, and you don't it's not a Richard Sherman. It's like put him on the right hand side, and he's completely locked down.
And say goodbye to that side of the field.
Say goodnight to that side. However, I'm just saying it's a big upgrade to me having that hole from Josh Norman and now adding that veteran to your team. I think the defense is going to be a little bit better than last year, and this team right now, I wouldn't be surprised because of your schedule. I know that I mentioned I'm not afraid of these teams when it comes to that, but overall, looking at the schedule for the Panthers, it's not that easy of a schedule. It's not that easy. Like, your division's going to be tough. The Bucs could be a playoff team. I expect the Falcons to be in it to win it again like they were last year. The Saints are going to be a tough team, adding Adrian Peterson. I know they lost Brandon Cooks, but they add Adrian Peterson onto that line. You got to play the NFC North. That'll be tough. You got games like the Patriots and the Eagles, teams that I like. This is a team where I think at best you're looking at like a 7-9, maybe 8-8 season from the Panthers this year.
Yeah. I'm a little down on the Panthers, and I know that, and I'm sorry to Panthers fans out there.
No claw up.
I claw up. You guys know I claw up, but I'm a little down on the Panthers this year just because I think that the loss of Josh Norman, and I was one who said I don't think it was going to be that big of a deal, and I was wrong. I can admit that. I was wrong that Josh Norman was a bigger deal than I thought. And I see some of the additions, and I like the ideas of them, but I'm not 100% sold on that. Where even if the defense is better, it's still, if it gets to an average defense, that's going to be beneficial. The scary thing to me when I look at this team and what happened to them since they lost the Super Bowl, they went from scoring 31 points a game to scoring 23 points a game. And that is a huge loss. That's over a touchdown of a loss.
And that's where you get the decision to go for a Christian McCaffrey who can be explosive on the offensive side.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I think that wide receiver, the wide receiver and the running back combo in picks 1 and 2, and I know I said that in the wrong order, you got to figure they're trying to get more points, of course. The offensive line, they made some additions there. They're trying to improve that, which is something that they needed. So certainly you can see the rationale behind everything the Panthers are doing, and they should, on paper, be a pretty good team. I'm just not 100% if I buy it completely or not, or if I think that apparently 2015 may have been a flash in the pan. And then maybe this team just isn't going to be that good again, because they were fucking phenomenal in 2015. They were one of the best teams in the NFL. I mean, Peyton Manning got lucky that he kind of got an off night out of them. Broncos fans, don't get too angry at me. But this team was better than you on paper, especially with the hobbled Peyton Manning that was walking out on the field.
And a lot of people going into that season, I mean, another thing that you got to look at too is Cam Newton. That was the big thing of the dab year.
Yep.
That was the dab year.
The dab.
And then he retired the dab, and maybe you got to bring back the dab. Bring it back. But 35 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, and then last year it went down to 19 touchdowns and went up to 14. I know that Panther fans are going to say, oh, it's only 4 more interceptions, but when you're going from 30-some touchdowns to now 19 touchdowns.
It's the ratio.
It kind of looks like a mere
issue.
He looked like a mere mortal now. He didn't look like Super Cam as we were used to in the past.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly think this team has the potential to be a better team. They're one of the teams where if you ask me if I'm willing to put my money on it, my answer is no.
They're a team where right now, I don't have them as a playoff team coming into this year. Like I said, 7-9 is kind of where I have them right now. And looking at the 2015 season, that like, oh, they only lost 1 game. And I know we had the storyline coming in of, do we need a loss from them? Or is it going to hurt them in the postseason? You look at the year before that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they were a 7-9 team. Then they had the 15-1, and then they went right back to right where that kind of 6-10. It's around that 7-9, and I feel like they stay there this season only because, I mean, like you, I like what they added on offense, especially Christian McCaffrey. Like if he's available in fantasy, I'm gonna pick him up. Like he's the guy. Like
I drafted him in a mock the other day.
One of the coveted running backs.
Yeah.
Like he's going to be explosive on the running back side for the Panthers. However, I look at their schedule and like right now, losses that I can see, just chalk it up. 2 to the Falcons, Bucs, Saints. That's 4 right there that I'm giving you. That's 4 losses. I think you lose to the Patriots. I think you lose to the Eagles. I'll have you lose to the Packers, lose to my Vikings. That's 8 losses right there. You lose to the Lions, that could be a maybe game. Boom, they're 7-9. So like, and lose to Miami. Boom, there's 10 losses right there. So this is going to be.
And what if you lost to the Bears?
Sure, Mark.
What if you lost to the Bears?
Maybe if Trubisky's starting by week 7, I give you that game.
It's possible.
Maybe, but it's a tough schedule, and I think that's going to be the Achilles heel for this Panthers team. But before we move on to the Saints, any last things that you feel like we need to touch for the Panthers?
Go Greg Olsen.
Go Greg Olsen. We didn't talk about Greg Olsen enough.
I mentioned him.
Former Bear, you got to mention him again. Former Bear.
1,000-yard tight end. Great guy.
And former Hurricane. Got to mention Greg Olsen whenever we can. But this is where we put the conversation on you. Let us know down below. What do you think about the schedule? Is the defense going to be tough? Really, one of the conversations we had, Panther fans, I want to hear from you. What do you think of the addition for Captain Mutterlin? Are you on my side where, yeah, you know what, this is a good pickup? Or are you like on Mark's side where it's like, yeah, you know what, the pickup's not going to do much of anything because guess what? He is not Josh Norman. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section. But Mark, we're going to move on into Down by the Bayou, into the New Orleans Saints, or I'm sorry, am I saying it wrong? Should it be the New Orleans Saints? Is
I think you said both of those wrong. So
did I say, just quit while in my head?
Something like that. I don't know. We're in Chicago.
Help us out. We're Chicagoans trying to be cool for you New Orleans fans. But
I don't think we're trying to be cool. I think we know we're not cool in this situation. They don't like us right now.
We are talking New Orleans Saints, and for this preview, you had to take them away from me, didn't you? You had to steal them away from me. You weren't happy with you weren't happy with Mark Ingram, were you? Like that wasn't enough for you. You had to go away and take Adrian Peterson as well. I know he only played 3 games, Mark. I know he only played 3 games last year.
Yeah.
But he was my guy. That was my guy. That he's like, let me put it this way. Mm-hmm. At work, I have a Vikings background. I noticed this week, it's Adrian Peterson. I have to find a new one.
Yeah, you do.
Because it's an Adrian Peterson Vikings background. So I have to find a new background at work. But the true question I'm getting to is, Adrian Peterson only played 3 games last year, got injured in the Green Bay Packer game. With Melvin Ingram, he is now the second running back in the depth chart. How good are the Saints going to be with now both Ingram and AP on this team?
Well, there's certainly a lot of potential because you got Adrian Peterson. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, it's weird when you see Adrian Peterson on depth charts and he's the second running back.
And he's not injured.
Yeah, it's a weird phenomenon right now to have happen. So this is a team where if these injuries don't show up for Adrian Peterson, as you said, he only played 3 games last year. If he doesn't get hurt, then, I mean, this is deadly because the New Orleans Saints were the number 1 passing attack. Mm-hmm. And they were in very, straight in the middle, average running game. Now, you just get Adrian Peterson's going to make it even better to where you have an above average to possibly good, great running game. You got, almost the greatest show on turf right now. Yeah. Now, of course, Brandon Cooks isn't here anymore. I think that is something that's worth talking about when you say that number 1 passing game. And then we also got to talk about what they tried to address in the draft quite a bit, which is the entire defense, one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year, and quite a few years prior to that as well. So offensively, this team is deadly because they have Drew Brees, they have Ingram, they have Peterson, they have all these weapons that they can take advantage of. My only kind of question is, I like Michael Thomas. I don't really like Ted Ginn that much.
He's a drop machine.
Yeah. We were just talking about that.
Yeah, he's a drop machine.
How big of a loss is this going to be for them?
Is Brandon Cooks, you're saying?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be huge.
I think that's the bigger question. Because Adrian Peterson, sure, he's going to be good. He's going to make this team better if he's there. If he's not better, it's still a good to, slightly above average running game. It's just that huge missing piece of a great wide receiver who's now in New England.
I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate just a little bit to my own point. My first reaction is, yeah, it's going to be big. It's going to be huge. However, the thing that I kind of think of, and this has kind of been the Drew Brees philosophy ever since he's been
in
New Orleans.
Because I'm going to get 5,000 yards.
It doesn't matter what your name is. Drew Brees is going to find you. How many times in fantasy over the years has it been well, you know what? This guy's the number 1 in the Saints. I'm going to go and pick him. And it's great. Willie Snead had 5 touchdowns today, and Brandon Cooks had 1. Yeah. That's an exaggeration, but you guys get my point of Drew Brees is going to find you. Mm-hmm. Drew Brees doesn't care what your name is, what do you do. As long as you can catch the ball, he's going to throw it to you.
But that's the part. You got to catch the ball, Ted Ginn Jr.
And I mean, the thing is, Ted Ginn Jr. to me is a question mark only because of the dropsies that he tends to have. But I mean, I look at this team. Michael Thomas had more targets, a few by 5, more targets than Brandon Cooks last year, more receptions actually too, almost
more yards,
20 more receptions than last year. He didn't have more yards though. Brandon Cooks had 1,173. Michael Thomas had 1,137. So they inversed each other at the end, but similar touchdowns, 9 for Thomas, 8 for Cooks. I think Thomas could be the number, and I feel like that's slighting him by saying, he could be. No, Michael Thomas is the number 1 option.
But the problem is your number 2 is a guy who's got drops.
I think Willie Snead, I think at the end of the year, it's going to be, when we're looking production-wise, not on the field, but production and yards, how it will turn out is Michael Thomas will have the most yards. Willie Snead could now be a 1,000-yard receiver this year. Because think about this.
Well, he wasn't that far last year.
Well, he had 895. Now you're taking away Brandon Cooks. So Willie Snead's going to get a lot more looks on the receiving end. He could get a few more touchdowns.
I mean, Drew Brees is going to get 5,000 yards because that's what the man does.
Yeah.
The ball's got to go somewhere. So somebody else is going to get over 1,000 yards for sure. I still think, though, that as much as Drew Brees is one of these rare quarterbacks, the Peyton Mannings, the Tom Bradys, the Aaron Rodgers, who it doesn't matter who you are, he's going to make you into a good wide receiver. You still have to work with what you have to an extent. And Brandon Cooks is quite the loss. So we'll see. I'm not saying it's a death sentence. This was the number one offense last year. At worst, it becomes the fifth best offense this year. It's not like it's going to be a terrible thing to lose him, but I do think it makes a difference, especially if Adrian Peterson turns into yet another injury, so he wasn't much of an addition at all. Then your offense isn't necessarily better than it was. It's the same as it was.
Here's the thing, though, with Adrian Peterson, and this is the interesting thing for the Saints this year, is the big thing in Minnesota that, it kind of worked into Adrian Peterson and just kind of the kind of player that he was. But a lot of times what teams would do is, hey, we're playing Adrian Peterson. We're going to load the box. Of course. We're just going to load it up. And what they can do is, because Adrian Peterson isn't the main bell cow for this running back system, what they could do is, hey, Mark Ingram, up the middle, up the middle, up the middle. Hey, that defense is creeping in. Fresh legs, Peterson out there. Boom, outside, and he's gone.
I'm just excited to see that play where both of them are on the field at the same time.
Which one do you go for? Which one is the ball going to go to?
That's going to be exciting to watch. It's certainly going to be a great offense. There's no question about how great this offense can be and should be. The problem is really the defense.
Well, and I like what they did. Like, in the draft, you mentioned the big draft pick for me was Marshawn Lattimore. Because for 2 years now, they got Kenny Vaccaro last year. But for me, the last 2 years, we had mocked them cornerbacks. 2 years ago, it was, I'm blanking on his name, the kid out of Florida that I want to say went to Tampa Bay, mocked a cornerback to the Saints. They didn't go cornerback. They go Kenny Vaccaro. It's like, okay, thought you would go cornerback, but you didn't. This year, you mock them with a cornerback. They go with a cornerback. And Marshawn Lattimore, to me, could be a guy that helps anchor this secondary, where it's like, okay, we got good things in the future. However, is this defense, is that enough? Is Marshawn Lattimore enough to say, yeah, this defense is going to be leaps and bounds better than it was last year?
It's tough because leaps and bounds, this was one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So it should be better. Lattimore's a great addition. I don't know about Marcus Williams because I don't think safety was that huge of a need for you, and he's currently, if you want to pay attention to our lads, he's currently sitting at number 3 on the depth chart.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the big addition. I do like Ramczyk, the offensive tackle out of Wisconsin. I was a big fan of him coming in, and I think 32 is a great steal for them to get him because I think he's such a talented... I thought he was going to go in
the first round.
Yeah, such a talented lineman. Well, he did go in the first round.
No, I thought he was. Yeah, I thought he was going to go. I had him in my mocks in the low teens, upper 20s.
Yeah.
For where he was going to go.
And then he goes 32. They definitely get Marshawn Lattimore, which is a good addition. It's going to be tough because I don't know... Drew Brees has shown that he can put up his numbers and this offense is going to be successful. But time and time again, this defense lets the team down. Because when a team is scoring as many points as the Saints are, 29 points a game, yet that defense is still giving up 28 points a game. I know you still have the advantage barely, but that's not a good situation to be. If this defense was just average, this is a Super Bowl winning team.
And I'm looking at the schedule right now only because, you look at last year, and the one thing that's similar about the Saints last year that I just mentioned about the Panthers was you look at games like, and shoot, my computer just turned it to 2015. Don't want to be spouting out those scores, but you got Raiders week 1, 1-point loss. The Giants week 2, 3-point loss. You look at Kansas City, 6-point loss. You look Denver, 2-point loss. Carolina, 3-point loss. You look at the Buccaneer game, 5-point loss.
Yeah.
And then the last week in Atlanta, a 6-point loss.
And this is not the situation you want a guy like Ted Ginn Jr. dropping the ball.
No,
just wanted
don't.
to rub the salt in your wound one more time, Ricky.
You don't. However, the thing that I think, like the games to me that are going to be the most important for the Saints are the divisional games, because you look at last year, split between the Panthers. You won the home game, they won the home game. Against the Bucs, they won the home game, you won the home game, and then you lost both against Atlanta. And I know that last one in New Orleans, you almost stole from them. You have to me, I feel like in the division, if you're going to lose 2 to the Falcons, you have to either steal 2 from the Panthers or steal 4 from both the Panthers and the Bucs. And you could do it because you almost beat those teams in your road games with them.
It's interesting. This team easily can go 4-2 in the division. They can easily split the whole division. I don't think they're gonna go too far in a way because the Falcons are too good. The Buccaneers are really good.
I think I'm seeing the same thing as last year. Just 2-4 in the division.
2-4.
2-4.
I don't know about that. I think they'll at least split the division.
You think that they'll actually beat the Falcons this time, or
I think they can.
Or you think it's going to be lose 2 to the Falcons and then they beat the Panthers?
Well,
twice?
they certainly could do it that way, but I definitely think they can beat the Panthers. They got the offense to go matching up with them. It's just a question of can that defense make a stop, and that's what they tried to address with Lattimore in the draft. I see this team easily as an 8-8 team. It's just a question of can they get a little bit better than that?
Is that on the best end, or is that that's where they are?
I think that's right where they're at. I don't think that's the best. Now, this is a team where I don't think the best is going to be, an 11-win season or something like that. I think 8-8 is pretty much right where they're at. They have not an easy schedule. They're going to go against a lot of tough teams, but this offense should be really good. It's just a matter of when they're playing some of these also really good offenses out there, is their defense going to be able to step up to stop them?
Do you want to know what record I have them with right now?
I'm going to guess 7-9.
No, 5-11.
Oof.
And the reason why is I feel like between I had them split with the Panthers, split with the Bucs. Basically what they did last year. We'll win the home game, you'll win our road game. Teams win at home, and then the Falcons, I've got them beating you twice. And I mean, the thing about the Falcons this year that's very interesting with the schedule is last year it was, hey, we played you week 2 or week 3, and then we played you at the end. This year, they get the Falcons 14, then they play the Jets, which would be a bye week for you, and then they play the Falcons again before playing the Bucs. It's just the schedule is very hard. I have them, honestly, within and I mean, take week 1 with a grain of salt because I am a Vikings fan, and that could flip, especially Adrian Peterson playing against his old team coming back home. But I could see this team starting 0-6 to start the season.
You know what's going to be pretty important for the Saints? Some of these games that are going to be not a clear and away win, but a should probably win.
Like the Dolphins,
the
Lions.
I wouldn't say the Lions, but the Dolphins, the Bills, and the Rams. Those games that are you probably should win it, but be careful type of games. Those are going to be very important for them because if they start to lose some of those games that they should be able to win, the schedule's too hard to really be forgiving for them in that case when they're going to probably lose to the Patriots, probably lose to the Packers. They're playing the Falcons, they're playing the Buccaneers, which are both teams that I have probably going to the playoffs. They're going to have tough games out here. Redskins being a potentially tough team as well. They can't afford to let any of those other games pass by them. And that Dolphins game is in London. So not always easy to go to London and have to play. Especially
Could be a tie.
Could be a tie. Especially if they lose, the 3 games before that, like you're kind of predicting. It would be rough to then go into London and potentially lose 4.
Yeah, and I mean, the big thing that I feel like this team, the big thing they have to do, and I mean, Saints fans are going to say, well, Ricky, you're kind of putting a microscope over this. I feel like this team needs to play better on the road because last year they were 4-4 at home and only 3-5 on the road. And I say the microscope because people are going to say, well, Ricky, 1 win on the road and we are, boom, 500 all the way around last year. But I see, like, out of the wins that I have, 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 5 are at home. The only road game that I have them winning is against the Rams, and that's because I am not high on the Rams at all, even in Jared Goff's second season. However, there are games like the Dolphins, like the Lions, I'll even say, because it's in New Orleans, like the Bills. If you flip those 3 games, you're sitting at 8-8. So, like, to me, the worst case scenario is where I have you at, which is 5-11, or maybe even, let's say, God forbid, you get like a game where like the Bears beat you or the Rams beat you and you're a 4-win team. But your best case scenario is like if everything goes perfectly, you're sitting there right there at 8-8. Like, this is not a team that's going to be challenging for a playoff. This is not going to be a team that goes and challenges for the division in my mind. This is a team that sits like at the best right there middle of the road, 8-8.
And the flip side is if one of these teams we expect to be good isn't,
like the Buccaneers.
If the Buccaneers turn around and they're just not what we were expecting out of them,
or if the Falcons have a
Carolina Panthers like season,
not Super Bowl hangover, but yeah, like Carolina Panthers.
Then all of a sudden this team is gonna potentially get another win or 2 and be competing for a division or at least a wild card. But yeah, we're gonna see because right now I had them pretty much at 8-8.
Well, and this is always this is the division where we always talk about year in and year out. Well, it's like, well, Atlanta won it this year. Who's winning it this year? Because it's usually never the same team. Like,
a lot of people have Tampa Bay slated penciled in right now.
You know what? Tampa, we're gonna get to them, but they could be a huge sleeper coming into this year. Like, you think 2 years ago it was Carolina. Last year it was the Falcons. Could the Saints or the Bucs kind of be the team to sneak up into it? I don't think so. I think this offseason has been, woo, hype, we got Adrian Peterson, but the schedule's going to be way too tough for the Saints. And really, kind of like what you were saying with the Panthers is how I feel for the Saints. The defense, although I like what you did bringing in Lattimore and stuff, I do think that it's going to be your Achilles heel, and Drew Brees ain't going to be able to shoot you out of every game, especially when you do play like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan twice a year, Jameis Winston twice a year.
That's been the downfall for them in the last few years. So,
do you have any other things you want to mention about the Saints before we kick it off to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
No, I'm good to go.
This is where we kind of kick the conversation off to you guys. Saints fans, let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Are you guys higher on your team than us? Or how do you expect your kind of dual running backs in Ingram and Peterson to fare this year? And really kind of the offensive question is, how do you feel the wide receivers are going to do without Brandon Cooks out there for the wide receiver since he is in New England? Let us know down below in the comment section. And Mark, let's move on into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And with this preview, I want to get right into it. I want to start with the offense in this one because not only Jameis Winston now year 2 with himself and Dirk Cotter last year being the head coach for the first year. They did that so he could work with Jameis Winston now moving into year numero dos under their kind of duo together. However, this offseason, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went out and got some big weapons for Jameis Winston to throw to. I blanked on his name for a second, but they go out in free agency. I know they had Mevins there, but they bring in Deshaun Jackson to be the 2 to Mevins 1. And then in the draft, they go out in the first round and they get O.J. Howard, the tight end from Alabama. with those two moves alone, is this kind of Tampa Bay saying, you know what, we're going all in with Jameis Winston to make a playoff push in 2017?
Well, I think they have to be. Yeah, I mean, when you go out and get Deshaun Jackson, you go out and get O.J. Howard, you're just getting more weapons. I mean, Mike Evans was and has been very impressive lately. And what I always think of is fantasy football. He's kind of that guy who you're not necessarily going to talk about a ton before the draft, but he's that guy that everyone's hoping to get.
Yeah.
And now with O.J. Howard being a great weapon, we all remember Gronkowski and we all remember Jimmy Graham and wanting to be the team that has that big, unstoppable tight end. That's kind of what O.J. Howard is expected to be. And, of course, let's not forget about Doug Martin. Doug Martin, which should be able to, he should be able to kind of carry his share of the load because, yes.
However, the big thing is, and what I'm hearing from Matthew Berry is I saw a thing on ESPN where it's not even for sure that the muscle hamster and Doug Martin is going to be the starter for the Bucs this year.
I don't know. I kind of still am expecting that he would be. I don't know. What are they expecting? Jaquiz?
Or Charles Sims?
Yeah, I guess Charles Sims could be. I still like Doug Martin, though. I still like Doug Martin quite a bit and what he can do. I just think that it's a running back by committee situation most likely, but these guys will have this fairly average running game. But when you get this help, when you make this passing game going to be even better, then all of a sudden this run game is going to get a lot less pressure on them, should make everything a more efficient and more effective just offense in general. When you couple that with the fact that they're a fairly average to a slightly above average defense, you are looking at a playoff team. You're looking at a team that can go out there and win games. And my big thing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year was that, and this upset some people, some Buccaneers fans, I said that they gave up more points than they scored. And that's not good. You're not going to get to the playoffs when you're doing that. And yeah, sure, it was by a point. But, you got to change that around. So this offensive addition, getting Justin Evans, the safety in the second round, they're obviously trying to do what they can to make it better. And I think that they did a lot, to work with that. And getting a guy like Chris Godwin out there, who's a wide receiver, is nothing huge, nothing crazy. You're not going to go buy his jersey. But at least it's something improving upon what they need to. What they said was, we need more weapons, and we got to make the defense better as well. And that's what they tried to do in the offseason. Well,
and the one thing, honestly, the only reason why, and this will be a joke, Buccaneer fans, don't jump all over me for this, but want to know why the Buccaneers won't make the playoffs this year?
Why is that?
Who's still on the team? Defensively, who is still on the team?
My boy, Chris Conte.
Chris Conte.
I love Chris Conte.
Like the cancer. Like
he's there.
He can't. If he's on your team, like it's. I keep thinking back to that Bears-Packers game where it's like, what? Oh, Jordy Nelson's in the end zone. Huh.
Whoops.
I didn't know I had to cover a guy, guys.
That was my guy?
My faux pas. My bad, guy.
Chris Conte, that's a real talent out there.
But, hopefully he's not. There's no injuries and he doesn't become your starter out there.
Hopefully he does.
But, the good thing for this Bucs team in all seriousness is their main departures. Mike Glennon, not that big of a departure. You got Jameis Winston.
As long as
or as you like to call him, the
famous Jameis?
No, not Mike Glennon.
Oh, Mike Glennon, Ginger Giraffe.
Yeah, Ginger Giraffe or the
red
red
we're talking about Jameis Winston. I don't have a nickname for Jameis.
Mike Glennon, the Ginger Giraffe.
Although I will say this though, Jameis Winston will get injured this year.
Oh, you think so?
Ryan Fitzpatrick's on the team.
Oh, okay.
He's not even gonna make it to week one. Fitzmagic will work his voodoo, and he will be starting week one. But bound to happen.
Like seriously though, they only lose defensively. You lose you lose Bradley McDougal and then Akeem Spence, and those are your only losses on defense. To me, not the biggest losses, not the ones that you can't overcome. And I still look at this defense. By the way, if you're listening to the full podcast, Vernon Hargreaves, that's the name I couldn't remember. The only reason I remembered it now, because I knew he was on Tampa Bay, and he's staring me right in the face. You still get Vernon Hargreaves. You still got Brent Grimes. You still have guys like Robert Ayers, Jared McCoy, William Golson, who you re-signed this offseason. You still have guys on this defense that can do some work. You go out there and get the offensive weapons that you need to go out there and do work. And I think that this is the make it or break it season for the Buccaneers. Because you think of last year, think back to that year, they were almost a playoff team. Yeah. Like coming into, I still remember December 18th, watching that game against Dallas, hoping, praying, sitting on the edge of my couch, hoping that the Buccaneers would beat the Cowboys. Seat. My seat.
To make the analogy, the phrase.
I was watching it on my couch, sitting on the edge of my couch, but I was hoping that they would beat the Cowboys in that game.
Because you're a Cowboys hater.
And I was a Cowboy hater last year. Plus, I really don't like the Cowboys because of who they employ on their team. They kind of find the worst people to employ, but that's besides the point. I thought that it was going to be win that game, sky's the limit, then you're bringing momentum into the Saints game, bing, bam, boom. You could be a playoff team. We talked about that. We talked about the Bucs being a playoff team at the end, or could they make a playoff run? They lose by 6, and they lose because of Jameis Winston was the sole factor, and his decision-making was the factor of why they lost that game. Cowboys didn't do anything special to beat them. And that's why this year, so important for not just the Bucs, but this will be a very important year for Jameis Winston, because if he plays well, this team could be a playoff team. Right now, in my preliminary draft, I have them at 7-9. That's maybe a little low. Games I could flip: the Dolphins, the Bills, and then even let's say I flip a game where they beat the Saints or they beat the Panthers. Because right now I got them kind of splitting the entire division. They could be a 10-win team and a playoff team.
Which I have them at about 10 wins personally, but. I think that the thing I kind of look to with Jameis Winston, he was 28-18 last year, touchdowns to interceptions. Mm-hmm. I would love to see those interceptions go down, but I understand Jameis Winston, he's kind of a gunslinger. He's going to make that happen. So at the very least, get the touchdowns up then. But getting these better weapons out there, it's only going to bring down the interceptions, right? Mm-hmm. Because he's going to have more reliable targets. Although the flip side, someone might want to say, is these gunslingers, when you give them weapons, they say, all right, then I'm going to throw it in there.
No, you gave me weapons. I'm going to
use them. To them. But I think the big thing for Tampa Bay is just that so much of this team was average when you really look down at the stats. Defense was a little below average when you look at most stats, but overall fairly average. The passing game's a little bit above average, nothing too incredible. Running game, a little tiny bit below average, but not by much. And then, the amount of points they score is exactly average. So you look at the team and you just start to think they need to get something going. Why did we necessarily expect them to get into the playoffs? Because they had the momentum going. Mm-hmm. But you look at the stats, you look at them just on paper, and you're like, okay, well, it's just an average team, so it's not surprising that they miss. With a guy, with getting Deshaun Jackson, with getting O.J. Howard, this offense is immediately improved. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily know that the defense is immediately improved, but they definitely, they took their shots to try and make it a little bit better. So I don't know. I have them as a 10-6 team right now. I do believe in them. I like Mike Smith as the defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. I like Jameis Winston as a quarterback. I liked him coming out of college, even a little bit more than I liked Mariota. This created many debates in this room.
I am still the Mariota guy. You are the Winston guy.
I kind of look at it and I'm like, okay, if things go right and they continue down this progression, then sure, they get in. But if they stay as this average team who gives up more points than they score, if they can't score more touchdowns, if Jameis can't bring down the interceptions, then obviously they're not going to go. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. When you talk about Jameis Winston going into the sophomore year, he for sure needs to improve as a quarterback. And he's a 4,000-yard thrower. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but he needs to bring down the interceptions. He needs to get more touchdowns. He's got the weapons to do it. He just needs to keep that head on right. keep the brain going and don't make those dumb decisions. Just because you got Deshaun Jackson and he's a good wide receiver doesn't mean you need to throw it into triple coverage.
No, and that's exactly it. Like, the two things that I think this offense needs, Jameis needs to make smart decisions. Can't make those bonehead plays where you're sitting there, it's like, bam, you see the quarterback like hit the helmet.
As soon as you let it go, you're like, I shouldn't have done that.
Or like when you see this, which is like the international sign for my bad, when you just see them grab the head like this. The other thing, no matter who it is, Sims, Jaquiz, Muscle Hamster, they need a bigger presence on the ground. They need a way bigger presence. Like, you can't have a running back, your leading running back, have 560 yards and only 2 touchdowns. You just can't have it. And I know that you're going to say, well, Jameis Winston's a gunslinger and this is a passing offense. You have to have a solid run game to complement Winston and the passing attack.
Plus, I mean, that works when you have the
healthy.
best. Well, I was going to say that works when you have the best passing game, but this was just an average passing attack.
Yeah, you have to have a run game to complement it. Also, and I mean, looking at the schedule, like I mentioned, I have them right now 7-9. That could change when we get to our prediction podcast at August 21st that week when we do it. However, I kind of see this team as 7-9 at the worst, 10-6 at the best. And to me, the games that it comes down to, there are 3 in my mind. The Dolphins to start the season, the Bills week 7, and then the Panthers and the Saints. You got to win one of them. Because right now, I have this team the same as they were last year. Perfect 500 in the division. You split with every team. You're the only team out of the 3 other than Atlanta that I can say with confidence that you will take one from the Falcons like you did last year to start the season. Now, some people may say that was them kind of getting the better of the Falcons before we even knew anything about anybody coming into this year, but I just feel like if you can steal that one game to make you one game above 500 in the division, and then get that Bill game, get that Dolphin game, I could see 10 wins from this season.
I mean, I don't think this schedule is all that difficult when you compare it to some of the other ones in this division. I mean, you get the Giants at home. That's a huge win right there.
I still got the Giants winning that game.
I mean, I think surely the Giants can, but getting to play them at home is a lot better than going to New York to play the Giants because that's a damn good team.
Yeah.
You even get to play the Patriots at home, so it's a tough battle. It's going to be
a Thursday night game, too.
It is. Very much a uphill battle to win that game. But if anyone's going to upset the Patriots, it's going to be, someone that gets to play them at home. So that one, the Bills is your, is one of those away games that you can get that one for sure. I think they can pretty much split the division. So they certainly should have the ability to go 10-6. Well, I think they should be able to do it.
And another strong thing is like you end the season last year, your last 4 games were home, away, home. This year, you have a potential for a lot stronger of the end of the year because from week 14 on, home, away, home. You have 3 of your last 4 games are at home, with your last game being at home again.
Yep. And one of those games, the week 16 game at home at Carolina, who...
That one's on the road. That's the road game.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's the only away game for you. Is
Very
going to Carolina.
Game.
Yeah, I mean, you can win that one because Carolina wasn't, that great this year. I'm a little down on them this year until we see what happens.
A little down or a lot of down?
No, I wouldn't say I'm a lot down on them, the claw up Panthers. I'm always clawing up.
You're a lot of down on that defense.
Yeah, I'm a lot of down on the defense because, I don't know, and maybe I should be more down on this, Tampa Bay defense if I don't come across as very down on them. I don't know. I just think that this team overall was very average last year. And I think the only real big improvements they made was giving, I almost said Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston some weapons.
They did it. They got him weapons. You get him
really,
O.J. Howard, you
to
get
me,
him
that's
Deshaun
really
Jackson.
the only improvement that they made. So how big of an improvement is that going to be?
Well, and a lot of it, and this will be the last thing that I say about the Buccaneers, a lot of this season is going to be on Jameis Winston. It's going to be on your decision. Like, buck up. buck up or shut up, basically, this season, because we've seen you now, this is his third year in the league. He had his first year with Lovey. Then they get rid of Lovey to let him work with Coach Cotter. And now it's like, you know what? Buck up or shut up. Like, if you're going to make the same mental mistakes, then, like, if that happens this year, then we have the conversation next year of, like, is Jameis Winston the guy? Like, is this meant to be for the Buccaneers, or is this going to be a failed project already?
Well, I don't think we'll be having that conversation. I mean, he puts up 4,000 yards a season. He certainly is improving in touchdowns. Unfortunately, he's getting worse in interceptions. But the touchdown improvement is better than the interception decline. So I don't think we're going to have that discussion.
Or let me put it this way: can the Bucs be a playoff team with Jameis Winston at the helm? That's a conversation we might have if the mistakes keep happening and they don't challenge.
I don't know. I don't think that Jameis is really what the issue is necessarily. I mean, the interception, sure, but you understand he's a gunslinging quarterback. The biggest issue to me is
the run game. To me,
the run game doesn't perform as it should, but the defense needs to get better too. If you start to improve that defense, and you should, Mike Smith is your defensive coordinator. You should be able to have a good defense out there. You start to get that good, and then, okay, some of these mistakes can get covered. Gunslinger quarterbacks are going to be best when they have a good defense.
And that's kind of what this year, I think that defense will be better. I think that at the end of the year, we're going to look at Winston, we're going to look at the run game. Those are the two spotlights that we're going to put on this team. But we're going to flip the conversation onto you guys. Bucs fans, let us know what you think about your team, about your defense, about Jameis Winston, about the run game. Is this team a playoff team? Because this is the first one kind of from this division that we have kind of been able to say, hey, you know what, this is a team that if you go 10-6, like I said, if I flip this team to 10-6 on my computer with all of everything that went on in my league, they're a playoff team. So it's possible to get to the playoffs if you get to that 10-win mark. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. But Mark, we started from the bottom. Now we are here at the almost top.
Yep.
Almost top. We're here at the almost top as we are now previewing the Atlanta Falcons, or as my Simpsons fans might go, the Atlanta Falcons, the Denver Broncos. We're previewing the Atlanta Falcons, and really the thing that we have to start with this one is, can the Falcons overcome what happened last year? Or is this going to be a year, and Falcon fans might think I'm stupid for asking this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Can they overcome what happened in the Super Bowl? Or is there a possibility this team pulls a Panthers, where it was Super Bowl, you lose to one of the better quarterbacks or one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and now you're just like, they're not as good as they were last year?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing for the Falcons. I mean, it's crushing. Let's just get it out of the way.
Matt Ryan got a new commercial from Gatorade out of it, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's
with
nice.
Serena Williams and Michael Jordan.
So that's not a bad deal. But let's get it out of the way. They blew a 25-point lead. It's been said. It doesn't need to be said in the comment section. I'm trying to save you Atlanta Falcons fans out there. Something that's going to get you angry, because they're out there.
Sean said it, I think, 25 times in their draft video. So, yeah, it was
subtle.
It was very subtle. Very subtle.
So I got it out of the way already. We don't need to do it. You can thank me later, Falcon fans. So here's the thing. This was one of the best.
It wasn't 25, 21-3. That was it. It was a 21-3.
No,
lead.
they blew a 25-point lead.
Okay, no.
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you right?
They blew a 25-point lead.
Okay. Go on what you were saying. Forget I said anything.
I got you. 25-point lead.
Forget I said anything.
So they had one of the best offenses. I mean, undisputed. No questions about it.
Not Skip and Shannon, though.
Yeah, I thought that's why I kind of hesitated when I said it. And I'm like, oh, that's already a show.
Not Skip and Shannon, though.
Now we got to pay
royalties
to, what is it, Fox Sports Net 1?
FS1.
Fox Sports Net 1, whatever. So they had one of the best offenses. All right. They scored more points than anybody. The problem is they didn't have that great of a defense. It wasn't a bad defense, but it wasn't that great. So the question really comes down to, yeah, sure, can the offense continue to perform? But, I mean, you got Julio. Sanu was doing great out there. You got Matt Ryan, Devonta Freeman out there, Chevin Coleman. So you got all these weapons. You're not worried about this offense. My question is a guy like Tak McKinley, whatever he wants to be called. Duke Riley, getting him in the third round, inside linebacker. Are these going to be guys who really can come in and make a difference? Are they even really going to be asked to make a difference? Because this team needs to get more of a pass rush going on, sure. They need to stop teams from scoring. I mean, really, we can talk about the 25-point, loss all we want here, blowing that, but all it can really take is one stop. I know it's Tom Brady, but how many of those absolute terribly blown coverages were there in the Super Bowl during that comeback? I mean, it was painful to watch at times.
Was it all their fault, though? The offense wasn't scoring.
Well, no, I'm not saying that it's their fault.
They got to 28, and then the offense said, we're going to stop.
But throughout the season, what was good? The offense, not the defense. And then it comes down to the Super Bowl, and we're just sitting there on a national stage watching these blown coverages. And they need to be able to stop opposing quarterbacks. Whether that's going to be because you're hitting them behind the line, which they've got pieces to do it already, and now they're getting an addition as well, or if it's going to be the secondary that needs to improve. To me, that's really the big thing that I'm going to kind of hope to see out of them, because you look at Atlanta's passing defense, and they're towards the bottom. They're like 28th when it comes to defense against the pass. When it comes to the run, they are 22. Sure, you can have as good of an offense as you want, but we talked about this with Drew Brees. That offense can be absolutely amazing. Drew Brees has the best passing game in the NFL, but does it get him to a single playoff game ever since that Super Bowl? He can't get back. Now, I'm not saying that the Atlanta Falcons are not getting back. This is such an impressive team. Almost the greatest show on turf out there last year. But if you just improve that, and they tried. They made their additions in the offseason. No joke about it. So they tried. If these come up and these guys come to play, these new kids are here to play, then all of a sudden, there is no doubt in my mind that the Atlanta Falcons are right back there. They're a 12, 13 win team, and they're going right back for it.
I think they will be back there, and mainly because I think in the regular season, I mean, I look at the roster, and you didn't lose too much. You didn't have to add too much. The biggest addition on this team is on the defensive front. You add Dontari Poe to your offensive line, which is going to help. Is it going to necessarily help in the pass rush game? It might help in the fact of he takes up two guys.
Well, that's more of what McKinley is going to be there for, to come in and pass rush.
Yeah, and McKinley's going to be looks like he'll be on the left side. Vic Beasley on the right. Also, Brooks Reed is also on the left side as well. So it's kind of using the combination of him and McKinley. I look at the schedule, and with the team that they have, I still have them going 13-3 this year. And I know there are games you're like, well, Ricky, the Packers could beat them.
Well, Ricky, they play the Bears at home.
You look at the Patriots.
Let's be real here.
The Patriots could beat them. I do have the Falcons beating the Patriots in the regular season. In the revenge game, this Falcons team, I think that this is going to be a year where they're the favorite in the division. They make the playoffs again. And really it comes down to how are they going to fare against the big boys. I don't have them beating the Cowboys right now. I don't have them winning in Seattle. I have them losing one Buccaneer game because I think the Bucs can get the better of them at home. This is a team that is going to be back into the playoffs, will probably be there as a division winner. The only question is, can they muster the strength in the playoffs to kind of finish what they couldn't last year? Because you look back at last year's playoffs and what they had in that schedule, and it's like that Packer game, most people were coming in thinking, well, the Packers just beat the Giants. The Packers just beat the Dallas Cowboys. We're gonna probably have a Patriot-Packers Super Bowl. That's what most people were thinking. And I know people are saying, well, Ricky, the Seahawks lost to the Falcons. But yeah, they lost to the Falcons because you got to play them at home. You got to play them at home instead of with the 12th man in Seattle. So can they do that again? Can they run the table against maybe 2, maybe 3, depending on if they're a top 2 or 3 or 4? Can they run that gambit in the NFC and then beat whoever the AFC kicks out, which, let's be honest, right now the team that I'm thinking it's going to be is either the Raiders or the Patriots.
Yeah. I think here's what I look at with their schedule. It's not very difficult. It's really not. I mean, you get so many advantages. Look at these away games that you get against the Bears, against the Jets.
The Lions.
You're going to play the Lions, which I don't want to sleep on the Lions, but still. Sure, you're going to have to go to the Patriots, but at least you get that revenge game. So there should be motivation there. You're going to have to play the Seahawks at home. That's going to be your probably toughest matchup you got here. But I think they can fare well in their division because they should.
I got them 5-1.
They get to play the Packers at home. That's a huge advantage right there. They don't have that difficult of a schedule. They get to play your Vikings at home as well. So they can go out there and they can just run away with it. They really can. I mean, there's no doubt about how great this offense is. They will put up points. If this defense just gets a little bit better, they can't lose very much. I mean, the only thing that I see happening to really stop the Falcons, I don't see them getting in their own way. The only thing I see really stopping the Falcons is if they get to the playoffs and they can't get it done then. Kind of what you're saying.
No, that's exactly it.
There's no reason why they should lose the division. I do like the Buccaneers, but I have them as a wild card team, not as a division winner. But I really think that the Falcons will win the division without a doubt, and they should easily be able to do it. They just have to not get in their own heads when they get to the playoffs. Getting themselves nervous, start thinking about the Super Bowl loss. This team's too good for that.
No, and they exactly are. And I mean, the thing that I am kind of thinking about right now in my schedule, of course I'm not going to give it all away, but like teams that I think that they could play this year when we get to the playoffs, depending on where things fall, is they could play the Seahawks like they did last year. You could play the Packers again. And, I mean, part of me wants to say that Packers game where if you see the Packers again in the playoffs, then it might be one of those things where, hey, you know what? The Packers might be able to get your number because that was a dismal game. I know you enjoyed seeing it, being a Bears fan. You enjoyed seeing the Packers get a little bit of a beatdown in the second half from the Atlanta Falcons. But, like, another team that they might play this postseason that could be a problem for them, the New York Giants. You could see the Cowboys. You could see the Giants. You could see the Seahawks. You could see the Packers. Can you run the gambit? That's the term I'm using. Run the gambit against the NFC again to get to the Super Bowl. Are you that confident in this team? That's the true question that it comes down to.
Well, I think they kind of just had the shootouts and went past people. And you can see it in the way that they got so far ahead of Seattle that Seattle couldn't get back up. Even when they had their comeback, they couldn't get back to it. You saw you just mentioned the second half of the game against the Packers where they just went right past them and the Packers couldn't really get anything going. You saw it in the Super Bowl in the first half and then a little bit of the third quarter where they just blew past the Patriots, just blew past them. The problem was they couldn't keep it afterwards because of the defense. Now, imagine they have this better defense to where it's not just that these teams couldn't get it started. Because the Seattle Seahawks easily could have...
You're basically putting the foot on the throat and keeping them down.
Because the Seattle Seahawks easily could have stopped it all at the very beginning and beaten the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
They were a possession away from doing it. They were almost there. They could have done it. Aaron Rodgers is never a guy you count out. Tom Brady showed what Aaron Rodgers has done to many teams, which is come back and win at the very end. So the Falcons were a dangerous team last year by their offense, but they were a danger to themselves as well because they kept letting well, I shouldn't say they kept, but there were 2 times in the playoffs where they let teams come back. One time it didn't hurt, the other time it bit them.
Well, and the thing that this is the one team that I think is going to hurt they could hurt the Falcons the most if they see them in the playoffs. Do you want to take a guess at what team I'm thinking of, Mark? You know I love to play this game where I don't just tell you, I make you guess.
I feel like you're Giants.
It's the Giants. And the reason why it's the Giants is offensively, not only, like, I am really high on the Brandon Marshall signing. I feel like it's a great compliment to OBJ, and they don't have to rely solely on him. They've got now Marshall and OBJ out there. The run game is going to be the biggest question mark for the Giants, but what's the one thing the Giants have?
Defense.
Is a defense. And if the Giants if they play the Falcons and they're able to just control the game defensively while the offense works and get a few points on them. Remember that Packer-Giants game where going into halftime, the Packers, like for most of it, up until the very end, and actually the very last play, it was 7-6. It was a 1-point game until Aaron Rodgers hit Randall Cobb for 42 yards as time expired in the first half. Then the second half happened, and Giants brought it back to within a point, but then the Packers offense just exploded on them, and OBJ kind of had a meltdown in the locker room, throwing his helmet against one of the lockers. If the Giants are able to do that to the Falcons, and the thing is the defense. I know that people are going to say, Ricky, well, the Packers didn't have the best defense. Yeah, the thing, though, is when you go into Lambeau Field in the playoffs, when it's a little colder, it's hard to play there. It is hard to play in Lambeau late in the season. The Falcons had the benefit of the doubt of playing at home, but the one thing that the Falcons do have that is one of those things where opposing teams, if the right one gets in there, I know you guys got a new stadium, which has a big circular hole at the top, but you're still playing in a dome-like structure. Yeah. You're still playing in a stadium that if the weather is bad, you close the hole, and you are now in a dome instead of having that open hole at the top of your stadium. I look at the Giants. They could come in.
And it's also Atlanta. The weather doesn't get bad.
And if that defense can come in and that defense kind of slows down your offense, I know you're saying, well, God, Ricky, we get out to fast starts. That's what we do. But if they do the impossible, slow you down, and Eli hits, and gets an early lead, this Giant team could be the one in the playoffs that ends up being the kryptonite for the Falcons.
For sure. For sure. I mean, I think that's one of the teams that'll match up very well to them. Any team that can go toe-to-toe with Matt Ryan is going to be right there because that's who they face. I mean, they face Russell Wilson, they face Aaron Rodgers, they face Tom Brady. Quarterbacks that can go toe-to-toe with anybody.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to be dangerous for them. I for sure expect them winning the division. I for sure expect them back in the playoffs. The question is just how far they're going to go.
My question, this is the last one I will ask you in this one. This might be our shortest preview, but that's usually what you get when you have teams that are so good where there's no kind of questions to ask about this team. What if I know the Cowboys, I'm expecting them to be different than last year. What if they played the Cowboys this year? Because I know that was a matchup that we all expected before Aaron Rodgers hit Cook for the miraculous catch on the edge of the sideline. Could the Cowboys match up with them and Dak this year? I know it's a new year.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so because Dak is that methodical kind of quarterback. He's going to dink and dunk, and then they're going to use the run game. So it's a slow game, and the Falcons are built on, almost Chip Kelly, we're going to score fast. And neither defense is that good. They're not that great. So I don't expect that to be that big of a deal. I think that
a true tortoise in the hare.
Yeah, Matt Ryan could just blow past him. And I'm not saying that the Cowboys can't put up their points as well, but I see Matt Ryan going right past.
No, this is a team, though. I mean, I think both me and you are in agreement where this is a team, could be 13-3 again, could be a top 2 team in the NFC, could go right back to the playoffs. And if they can string things along in the NFC again, this could be a team this year that goes back to a second straight Super Bowl in my mind. They would be one of the handful of teams in the NFC that I would pick to go to a Super Bowl.
Unfortunately, if they do it, they're probably going to have to face the Patriots again.
Current
favorite.
To me, there are 3 teams that could be in the Super Bowl. The Patriots, the Steelers, the Raiders, in no particular order. And the reason why I would have the Steelers as the last man out is because if they play the Patriots, they're screwed. If they play the Patriots, then
they can't
lose.
play the Patriots.
They can't beat the Patriots in the playoffs. It's proven. But any final thoughts on the Falcons before we wrap this thing up?
No, I mean, just it's a damn good team. If that defense just gets a little bit better, this team is almost unstoppable.
Well, and this is where you guys let us know what you guys think about the Falcons. Are they going to be as good as they were last year? If they get to the playoffs, can they run the gambit again and get back to the Super Bowl this season? And if there's a team out there that you see could be the kryptonite for this team in the NFC side of the playoffs, let me know who that could be down below in the comment section. Also, if you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, thank you guys for sticking with us. If you listen or watch the full-length podcast on YouTube, you guys are real troopers. Thank you guys for sticking around and watching this whole podcast with you. Mark and I will be back in a week. I was going to say 2 weeks, but that's not right.
No.
What I'm thinking is August 21st. Mark your calendars. That's the week Mark and I do our full division previews, do our full hold us to them predictions for the 2017 season. So mark your calendars there. We'll be back next week for some more football news. But as always, have a good day, everybody.